The summer heat pressed down on rural Georgia like a weight that refused to lift. The air shimmered above the asphalt, and the road stretched forward in a straight, endless line, cutting through farmland and forgotten towns that time seemed to have passed by without touching. This was the Deep South in 1974, not the version shown on television, not the version written into new laws, but the older one that still lived quietly along back roads and small diners. Muhammad Ali sat in the car silent, his massive frame relaxed but alert. Just 3 months earlier, the world had watched him do the impossible. In Kinshasa, Zaire, under the burning African sun, he had defeated George Foreman in the legendary Rumble in the Jungle, reclaiming the heavyweight championship of the world at 32 years old. He was once again the most famous athlete on the planet, arguably the most famous man alive. But out here, none of that seemed to matter. Ali and his small crew were driving from Atlanta to a speaking engagement in a small Georgia town. With him were people who knew him better than most: his longtime friend and photographer Howard Bingham, his legendary trainer Angelo Dundee, and his endlessly energetic assistant Bundini Brown. They had been on the road for nearly 2 hours, the conversation drifting in and out as the heat and hunger began to settle in. "We were getting hungry," Howard Bingham would later recall. Ali hadn't said much, but we were all feeling it. We needed to stop. That's when they saw it. A small, rundown diner sat just off the highway. The paint on the building was peeling, the parking lot was nothing but dirt and gravel, and the windows were streaked with years of dust and neglect. It didn't look like much, but it looked like food, and that was enough. Then Bundini Brown leaned forward in his seat. He said quietly, "Keep driving." Ali's eyes narrowed. There, taped to the front window in uneven black letters, was a handmade sign, old cardboard, thick marker, no attempt at subtlety. P-S-O-N-L-Y-N-O. For a moment no one spoke. The Civil Rights Act had been law for a decade. On paper, signs like that were illegal. But paper laws don't erase beliefs. And in places like this, far from cameras and cities, old hatred still lived comfortably. "Ali, come on, man," Angelo Dundee said from the back seat. "This ain't worth it." Wolf Ali wasn't listening. The car slowed. Howard Bingham turned his head sharply. "Ali." The car came to a stop. Ali stared at the sign through the windshield, his jaw tightening, his eyes fixed and unblinking. This was a look the men knew well. They'd seen it before championship fights, before impossible odds, before moments when Ali decided the world would not move him, he would move the world. Without a word, Ali opened the car door. "Oh no," Bingham muttered, already reaching for his camera. "Here we go." Ali stepped out into the heat and began walking toward the diner. His crew scrambled after him, torn between fear and familiarity. They knew this version of Ali. Once he decided something mattered, there was no stopping him. The bell above the diner door rang sharply as Ali pushed it open. Inside, every conversation stopped. There were about 15 people in the diner, all white, frozen in place with forks halfway to mouths and coffee cups hovering midair. The smell of grease and burnt coffee hung thick in the air. For a moment, no one recognized him. Then realization spread across the room like a ripple. Behind the counter stood a large man in his 50s, wearing a stained apron and a face hardened by years of sun, routine, and resentment. His name was Earl Miller. This diner had belonged to his family for 3 generations, and so had the rules inside it. Earl Miller recognized Muhammad Ali instantly. For just a fraction of a second, something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even excitement. Then it vanished, replaced by something colder. "We don't serve your kind here," Miller said loudly, his voice meant to carry. "Can't you read the sign?" The diner went silent. Ali stepped forward, calm and unhurried, his presence filling the small room. When he spoke, his voice was steady, almost gentle. "I can read just fine," he said, and in that moment, standing beneath flickering fluorescent lights in a forgotten roadside diner, Muhammad Ali made a choice, not with his fists, not with anger, but with words. A choice that would change more than just one man's day. Muhammad Ali walked slowly toward the counter, every step deliberate, every movement controlled. The wooden floor creaked beneath his shoes, loud in the silence that had swallowed the diner whole. 15 pairs of eyes followed him, some wide with shock, some burning with curiosity, others filled with something closer to fear. Earl Miller stood stiff behind the counter, arms crossed tightly over his chest as if bracing himself. Up close, the years showed in his face, deep lines carved by sun and stubbornness. A lifetime of habits never questioned. This was his place, his rules. And no man, famous or not, was supposed to challenge them. Ali stopped a few feet from the counter, I can read just fine, Ali repeated, his voice calm, almost friendly. In fact, I've read a lot of things, Miller scoffed. I don't care what you've read. This is my property. I got the right to refuse service to anyone I want. Now you best turn around and leave before I call the sheriff. Ali didn't move. Instead, he nodded slowly as if considering the words. I've read the Constitution of the United States, Ali said. I've read the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and I've read the Quran, which teaches me that all men are brothers, no matter the color of their skin. Miller's face reddened. I don't care about your book or your laws. Around here, things are done a certain way. Ali smiled, not a mocking smile, not an angry one. A calm, confident smile that unsettled people far more than shouting ever could. You know who I am? Ali asked. Miller hesitated.
Yeah, I know who you are. You're Cassius Clay.
The boxer. Muhammad Ali, Ali corrected gently. And yes, I'm a boxer. Ali leaned slightly forward, resting his hands on the counter as if they were two men having an ordinary conversation. I'm also the heavyweight champion of the world. Ali continued. 3 months ago, I beat George Foreman, a man everyone said couldn't be beaten. A murmur rippled through the diner. Ali's voice remained even. I've fought the toughest men on earth. I've taken punches meant to knock a man unconscious. I've stood in rings where people wanted to see me fall. Miller crossed his arms tighter. What's your point? My point, Ali said softly, is that I could walk behind this counter right now, and there ain't nothing you could do to stop me. The air tightened. I could knock you out with one punch. I could tear that sign out your window. I could make this the worst day of your life. Miller's eyes flicked downward. His hand moved slightly towards something beneath the counter, a bat, maybe worse. But Ali didn't raise his voice. But I'm not going to do that, Ali said. The movement stopped. I'm not here to fight you, Ali continued. I'm here to talk to you. Miller blinked. Talk? About what? Ali straightened. I want to ask you a question. For the first time since Ali walked in, Earl Miller looked uncertain. What question? He asked. Ali held his gaze. I want to know who taught you to hate. The words landed heavier than any punch ever could. The diner remained silent. Miller swallowed. His eyes shifted toward the other customers, searching for support, but no one met his gaze. My daddy, he said finally. My daddy taught me that whites and coloreds don't mix. That's just how things are. Ali nodded slowly. And who taught your daddy? Ali asked. And his daddy, I guess. And his daddy before him, Ali said quietly. 3 generations of men teaching the next generation to hate people they don't even know. Ali rested his elbow on the counter, his posture relaxed, almost conversational. Tell me something, Ali said. Has that hate ever made your life better? Miller opened his mouth, but no words came out, and in that silence something began to crack. Ali let the silence sit between them. He didn't rush it. He didn't fill it with noise. He understood something most men never learn, that silence can be heavier than words and far more uncomfortable than confrontation. Earl Miller shifted his weight behind the counter. His jaw tightened and relaxed again, like he was chewing on something bitter. Years of certainty, rules he had never questioned, were suddenly being examined under bright, unforgiving light. Ali leaned back slightly, his voice calm, steady, almost gentle. Let me tell you something about my life, Earl, he said. Can I call you Earl? Miller didn't answer, but he didn't object either. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, Ali continued. When I was 12 years old, my bicycle got stolen. I was so mad I wanted to fight whoever took it. A few people in the diner shifted in their seats. This wasn't what they expected. They thought this would be shouting, threats, police. Instead, there was a police officer named Joe Martin, Ali said. He told me, if you want to fight, you better learn how to fight right. He took me to a boxing gym, taught me control. Ali paused, letting the name hang in the air. Joe Martin was white. Miller's eyes lifted, just slightly. The man who changed my life, Ali said. The man who put me on the path to becoming heavyweight champion of the world was a white man. Ali gestured over his shoulder. My trainer, Angelo Dundee, he's white. Some of my closest friends are white. Some of the hardest men I ever fought in the ring were white. Ali shrugged lightly. And some of the kindest people I've ever known were white. Miller frowned. He muttered, Those are your work people. Ali's expression hardened, not with anger but with certainty. No, he said firmly. They're just people. Ali stepped closer. That's what you don't see, Earl. When I look at you, I don't see a white man, I see a man. Miller bristled. I ain't scared of nothing. Ali nodded slowly.
Yes, you are.
Miller's head snapped up.
I ain't.
You're scared of change, Ali continued, cutting him off gently. You're scared that if you treat black people like human beings, something bad will happen. Ali counted on his fingers. Calmly. Maybe you're scared your daddy would be disappointed. Maybe you're scared your customers would stop coming. Maybe you're scared that admitting you were wrong all these years means you wasted your whole life hating people for no reason. Miller's hands trembled. He clenched them into fists, then loosened them again. Ali turned toward the rest of the diner. Let me ask all of you something, he said. How many of you think that sign in the window is right? No one raised their hand. A woman near the back stared down at her plate. An elderly man shifted uncomfortably. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Finally, a middle-aged woman spoke, her voice quiet but firm. Earl, she said, the law says you can't have that sign anymore. I don't care about the law. Miller snapped, but his voice cracked. Ali turned back to him. Let me tell you what I see when I look at that sign, Ali said. I don't see strength. I see fear pretending to be strength. Ali's voice softened. I see a man hiding behind his daddy's hate because he's too scared to think for himself. I see someone who could be better but chooses not to be. Miller's eyes burned red. His mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time in his life, no one was afraid of him. And for the first time, he didn't know what to say. The diner felt different now. The tension was still there, thick and heavy, but it had changed shape. This was no longer the sharp, dangerous tension of a possible fight. It was quieter, more personal. The kind that creeps in when a man is forced to look at himself without excuses. Earl Miller swallowed hard. His tough posture had begun to collapse in small, almost invisible ways, his shoulders sagging, his eyes losing their edge. Ali watched him carefully. I want you to hear me, Earl, Ali said. I'm not here to shame you. I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm not here to win. Miller let out a bitter laugh. Feels like you already did. Ali shook his head. No, winning would be humiliating you. Winning would be tearing that sign down myself. Winning would be making you feel small. Ali tapped his chest lightly. But that's not strength. That's ego. Ali reached into his pocket slowly. Every movement was deliberate, non-threatening. He pulled out a folded bill and placed it gently on the counter. It was a $20 bill. I want to buy lunch for everyone in this diner, Ali said. Black or white. Doesn't matter. I want everybody to eat together as equals. The room froze again. Miller stared at the money like it might bite him. I ain't taking your money, he said quickly. Ali raised an eyebrow.
Why not?
Because. Miller hesitated. Ali smiled faintly. Because I'm black. Miller opened his mouth, then stopped. Ali leaned in slightly. Funny thing about money, Earl, it don't got a color. A few nervous laughs escaped from the customers. The sound broke something in the room. The air loosened just a little. Miller rubbed his face with both hands. When he dropped them, his eyes were wet. You don't understand, he said quietly. This place, this is all I got. My daddy ran it this way. His daddy before him. If I change, I don't even know who I am anymore. Ali nodded, understanding immediately. That's the hardest part, Ali said. Not changing the sign. Changing the story you tell yourself about who you are. Ali lowered his voice so only Miller could hear. Let me tell you something, Earl. In 10 years, 20 years, you're going to be an old man. You're going to sit somewhere quiet and look back on your life. Ali held his gaze. And you're going to ask yourself one question: what did I stand for? Ali continued softly. Are you going to be proud you kept a hateful sign in your window? Proud you turned people away because of skin color? Or are you going to tell your grandkids about the day you changed, the day you chose to be better? Miller's hands began to shake. I don't know how, he whispered. I don't know how to change. This is all I've ever known. Ali's face softened. This time. Genuine. You don't change all at once, Ali said. You start with one small thing. Ali glanced toward the window. You start by taking down that sign. The diner held its breath. Earl Miller stood there for a long moment, frozen between the man he had always been and the man he might become. His eyes flicked to the door, to the customers, to the counter, to the $20 bill. Then, slowly, he stepped out from behind the counter. Every eye followed him. He walked to the window, reached up with shaking hands, and tore the sign down. The cardboard ripped unevenly, the sound loud in the silence. He crushed it in his fists, walked to the trash can, and dropped it inside. When he turned back around, tears were streaming down his face. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm sorry for that sign. I'm sorry for turning people away. I'm sorry for being a hateful man. Muhammad Ali walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "That," Ali said quietly, "is the bravest thing I've seen all week." He paused. "And I just fought George Foreman." The diner erupted. People clapped, some cried, others laughed in disbelief. Howard Bingham's camera clicked nonstop, capturing a moment no one there would ever forget. Ali smiled and looked at Earl. "Now," he said, "oh, about that lunch. I'm starving." For the first time in decades, Earl Miller smiled back. "Coming right up, champ." That afternoon, Muhammad Ali sat at the counter of Miller's diner and ate a cheeseburger and fries. It wasn't fancy. The bun was slightly burnt. The fries were over-salted. But it was one of the most meaningful meals ever served in that small Georgia town. Customers, black and white, came in slowly at first, unsure if what they'd heard was true. Then more followed. Some asked for autographs. Some just wanted to shake Ali's hand. Others said nothing at all, choosing instead to eat and witness something they never thought they'd see in that place. Earl Miller served every single person himself. No hesitation, no distinction, no sign in the window. Howard Bingham watched it all through his lens, knowing this wasn't just another photograph for history books. This was something quieter, something deeper. A man changing in real time. Before Ali left, "I don't expect you to believe me," Earl said, his voice low, emotional, "but you changed my life today. I'm gonna be better." Ali looked at him for a long moment. "I believe you," Ali said, "and I'll be checking on you." And he did. Over the next several years, whenever Muhammad Ali traveled through Georgia, he stopped at Miller's diner. Each time, the place looked different, more alive. In 1975, Earl hired his first black employee. By 1978, half his staff was black. He became involved in his church's integration efforts and spoke openly about the mistake that had once defined his life. In 1980, Earl Miller wrote a letter to Muhammad Ali. In it, he thanked Ali for knocking some sense into me without throwing a punch. He wrote that he had told his children and grandchildren the story of that day dozens of times, calling it the most important moment of his life. "You taught me," Earl wrote, "that strength isn't about hate. It's about having the courage to change." When Earl Miller passed away in 1992, his family reached out to Ali with one final message. Earl's last wish was for Ali to know that the cheeseburger he served that day in 1974 was still the proudest meal he had ever made. The old diner building still stands today. It's no longer a restaurant, it's a community center, and on its wall hangs a small plaque that reads, "On this site in 1974, Muhammad Ali taught us that the most powerful weapon against hate is not a fist, but an open heart." Muhammad Ali never bragged about what happened that day. When asked, he would simply say, "I just had a conversation with a man." But those who were there knew the truth. Ali walked into a place of hate armed with nothing but words, dignity, and faith in human goodness. And he won a victory greater than any championship belt. Because anyone can knock a man down with violence. But it takes a true champion to lift a man up with humanity.